For more on this, we're joined now by our political correspondent, Charlotte Potts. She joins us from our parliamentary studios, and we'll be talking about the political repercussions. We're also joined by my colleague, Fabian Fundemark, who's at the prison in Leipzig right now, where Jabir Al-Bakr was found dead in his cell. First to you, Fabian, how was it possible that Jabir Al-Bakr managed to somehow apparently kill himself in spite of the fact that he was on suicide watch?
Well, first of all, in quite practical terms, there are media reports that he used his T-shirt to hang himself in his cell. But of course, the bigger question is how could that happen when he was under 24-hour surveillance? And that should have been the case since in German prisons. In this prison in Saxony, there's a rule that people with the danger of suicide have to be watched 24 hours. And the big question is, of course, now, weren't those orders given to the staff here in the prison to watch Al-Bakr, or weren't the rules followed? And how could that happen, that a person with this high risk of suicide and such an important person wasn't watched and managed to hang himself in his cell?
Okay, now Fabian, the suspect was taken into custody first by Syrian men who then turned him over to police. He later apparently implicated them as well in the plot the police are looking into. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, Al-Bakr apparently told investigators that those three Syrian men who helped arresting him were in fact confidants. And this is of course a strong accusation towards those people that are treated as heroes in Germany at the very moment. But of course one has to treat that very carefully. I mean, Al-Bakr might have just wanted to protect himself, his reputation, or he wanted to take revenge to those three men who arrested him or helped arresting him. So this is an important question, and sure is that investigators have treated those three Syrian men as witness. They've asked them, and they've also carefully checked whether there are any connections by them towards Islamic State or jihadist movements, so whether they are in fact heroes or whether they might be confident. So this is certainly checked, but Al-Bakr might have his own reasons to state that.
Okay, we're going to get our viewers right now a bit of a brief background to this story. Authorities in Saxony have been heavily criticized from the very beginning of this case. Let's see what's happened so far.
Friday, October 7th. Police in the eastern state of Saxony receive a tip-off about Jabir Al-Bakr. Germany's domestic intelligence agency believes he is planning a bomb attack. Police launch a manhunt for the 22-year-old from Damascus. He came to Germany in February 2015 and was granted asylum 4 months later. Saturday, October 8th. Police raid a communist-era apartment in the city of Chemnitz. They believe Al-Bakr is hiding there and evacuate the building. Officers fire a warning shot when they see the suspect leave the apartment block. But he walks past the armed commandos, who cannot catch him because their equipment is too heavy. In the empty apartment, they find hundreds of grams of explosives. Later, police defend their actions. We had to proceed very cautiously, particularly because there were explosives involved, and we were in the middle of a residential area with many innocent bystanders. You cannot take risks in that situation. In this context, we acted reasonably. Sunday, October 9th. Police raid another apartment in Chemnitz and arrest somebody who knows Al-Bakr. But there is still no sign of the suspect himself. Until 3 Syrian refugees in Leipzig recognize his photograph. They realize they have been sheltering Al-Bakr after he asked them for help. They tie him up with an electric cable and try to alert police. First I called the police. They didn't understand a word. Then I walked there and tried to explain that the wanted person was in my apartment. They didn't understand. It was only when I showed the photo that they started to act immediately. Finally, police arrest Al-Bakr. Wednesday, October 12th. 2 days after his arrest, Al-Bakr is dead, found hanged in his cell. He is supposed to have been under 24-hour surveillance, as he was considered a high suicide risk.
Now, Fabian, a series of errors, as we've seen there, and his lawyer has already been on Twitter expressing his outrage that in spite of being on suicide watch, in spite of already having tried to take his life in this cell, he's still found dead.
Yes, the lawyer spoke of a legal scandal, and I mean, he said also that his client, or that Al-Bakr, tried to manipulate, for example, sockets in his cell, that he destroyed lamps. So he was in a very critical state, and for him it is unbelievable that he couldn't be, that he wasn't watched 24 hours. But also in the political sphere, there's a big outrage here how this could happen, because of course Al-Bakr would have been a very important person to find out what else did he know in terms of connections to other people. Where did he get his explosives from? Where did he get the money from that he was carrying? What else could he tell about further plans, about maybe a further network? And all these informations are now impossible to gather since Al-Bakr's death.
Okay, Fabian, thanks so much for bringing us up to date from in front of the prison there in Leipzig, following all of these open questions for us throughout the day. We'll be getting back to Fabian. Thanks so very much. You know, politicians, of course, have already been reacting to this news on social media. Many politicians from Germany's governing coalition and the opposition have been on social media saying the suspect's suicide points to serious lapses by German official. Nels Ahnen from the governing Social Democrats summed up his reaction in one word: speechless. The opposition MP, Tobias Lindner from the Greens, asked, how can someone who's supposedly under constant observation be found hanged? And a Green Party member of the state parliament in Saxony, Katja Mayer, says if a terrorist under constant observation commits suicide, then something has gone seriously wrong in Saxony's prison system. Fail. Okay, now we're back here in Berlin with Charlotte Potts from our political bureau. Charlotte, a political storm brewing right now, of course, over this. How are officials here? What have we heard reacting from the authorities? Have we heard from Heiko Maas, for example, the justice minister?
Yeah, in general, this is seen as a major blow here of the authorities of the Saxony prison system. You've just showed us the Twitter feeds of the politicians. They're shocked and stunned. We have no official statement yet from Justice Minister Heiko Maas. So far, this case is in the authorities of the authorities in Saxony, in the state of Saxony, and they will hold a press conference in 3 hours' time where we will for sure learn more about this case.
You know, another big question, Charlotte, is why was Jaber Al-Bakr in a state prison and not in a federal prison, as is usually the case with terror suspects?
Yeah, exactly. The federal prosecutor in Karlsruhe is usually taking over these cases of terror suspects, which means that they are brought from the state prison to the authority of the federal prosecutor. In this case, that hadn't happened yet. And that is another unanswered question, why he wasn't in Karlsruhe yet. That will hopefully be answered at the press conference.
Do you have any background for us in terms of how often prisoners commit suicide in Germany? How frequent does something like that happen?
Not so often. This is a very unusual case. Usually when a prisoner is under, if a prisoner is under a risk of committing suicide, there is either a camera in his cell or there is an extra prison guard that is watching him at all times, following him even to the bathroom. So it is very curious why we hear that Al-Bakr was apparently under the risk of committing suicide and wasn't shadowed by a prison guard or watched by a camera. So there are a lot of unanswered questions in this case, and if this all proves to be true, then this is certainly a huge blow for the prison system in Saxony.
As Fabian already pointed out for us, now that Al-Bakr's dead, what dies with him is a lot of information about the investigation, important for the investigation. How does that now go forward?
Yeah, that is very interesting. So apparently he was questioned yesterday. He gave away some information about those Syrians that captured him. He was apparently, and that is to the information of the president of the intelligence service, planning an attack for this week in Berlin. The intelligence services and authorities prevented that, so that is, of course, a success. But on the other hand, there is a lot of information lost. The authorities wanted to find out what his motives were, what he was exactly planning, how he had been in touch with the Islamic State. He apparently traveled to Turkey to get in touch with them and to be trained there, and then returned to Germany. So a lot of unanswered questions, and the authorities are certainly not going to be happy about losing this kind of information.
Okay, an investigation that just became much more difficult. Charlotte Potts for us in Berlin, Fabian von der Mark for us in Leipzig. Both of you, thanks so very much for that this morning. Let's follow up on this with our political correspondent, Charlotte Potts. She joins us from our studios at the Parliamentary Building here in Berlin. Charlotte, a political storm brewing over this right now. How are authorities responding, the ones responsible? And have we heard it all from the Justice Minister, Heiko Maas?
Yes, it's a huge blow for German authorities. I mean, the suspect could have led to Islamic State networks, and all this information is now lost. We have heard no official word yet from Justice Minister Heiko Maas. Right now, this case is in the authorities of the state of Saxony, and there the prison and the state attorney, they will hold a press conference in a couple of hours, so we will learn more about it, and I'm sure that the Justice Minister is gathering all the information as we speak. As we've just seen in the Twitter feed, though, the political reactions are quite harsh. Politicians across the aisle are calling this a shocking incident. They are stunned. They call it a tragedy and also a danger for German security, basically. And the Interior Minister, Thomas de Maizière, was urging this morning that there should be a very quick and thorough investigation into this incident.
Charlotte, can you give us some background here, some perspective? How often does this happen? How frequently do prisoners commit suicide while in jail in Germany?
This really doesn't happen very often. If a prisoner is under the risk of committing suicide, then he is either surveilled with cameras or by a prison guard 24 hours who is even shadowing him, going with him to the restroom. Of course, there are privacy concerns about that, but that is usually how it is handled. So suicides don't happen very often here, and especially not with, that's the first, with a high-profile terror suspect. Of course, there will be questions now if he should have been guarded more thoroughly. Another question that will be answered today is with what kind of object he committed suicide, and if that kind of object should have been taken from him and from his cell.
You know, what about the bombing that Al-Bakr was planning? He was targeting apparently a Berlin airport or transportation here, rail stations. You know, how is that investigation and to the possible ties with Islamic State now going to go forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of questions just will be unanswered with him committing suicide. There is missing information. The authorities were hoping to find insights into his motives, into his plans. We have heard from media reports that Al-Bakr, who came to Germany in February of 2015, actually traveled to Turkey and maybe even Syria over the course of the last summer. So information is lost now on where he was trained, who he got his information from, and he could have also given insights into the Islamic State networks. He could have given all kinds of information. I think his capture, it was celebrated as a huge success. Of course, on the one hand, the president of the intelligence service yesterday confirmed that Al-Bakr was planning an attack on a Berlin airport sometime this week. And of course, that was prevented. That was seen as a huge success. But on the other hand, his capture could have given very valuable information into Islamic State networks, into their thinking and what they are planning here in Germany. And that information is now lost because of his suicide.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll know more in less than 2 hours when that press conference begins. Charlotte Potts, thanks for now. Well, social media is rife right now with speculation, and there are slews of questions being asked. Politicians from Germany's governing coalition and from the opposition have taken to Twitter. They're saying that the suicide points to serious lapses by officials. A Green Party member in the state parliament in the state of Saxony, where this all happened, Katja Meyer, says If a terrorist under constant observation commits suicide, then something has gone seriously wrong in Saxony's prison system. Fail. Niels Ahnen, he's from the Social Democrats, summed up his reaction in one word: speechless. Syrians here in Germany are also raising questions, including Monis Bakaris, a journalist and a prominent refugee activist. He wrote on Facebook, "I'm not convinced by the story of his suicide, especially because the police say he was hanged. But with what? I have a lot of questions, and what interests me and all of the Syrians in this country is justice." Okay, let's bring in our political correspondent, Charlotte Potts, here in Berlin. Charlotte, we have the state prosecutor holding a press conference in Saxony. What do we know so far?
Exactly. I was just listening into the press conference that is held by the Justice Ministry in Saxony, and the chief of the prison where Al-Bakr was held just confirmed that Al-Bakr was brought to the prison already on hunger strike. He was already at a risk of committing suicide. They then brought him to a cell. He had a talk with a psychologist who could not see the immediate risk of him committing suicide. Apparently, that is why he was not been watched 24/7. He was only brought to his cell with a t-shirt and jogging pants, sweatpants, and no other objects in his cell, and apparently then managed at 9 o'clock last night to hang himself in his cell with his own t-shirt, one of the only objects that he had in the cell. The Justice Ministry said it shouldn't have happened, but they haven't named any good reasons so far why they let it happen.
Okay, Charlotte, is there any discussion at this point who might bear responsibility for this? Is it the politicians, police, the prison officials?
Well, First and foremost, it is the eyes are definitely on the prison in Saxony where Al-Bakr was held. They should have put him under a 24/7 suicide watch, at least surveilled him with a camera. That is usual in other prisons, so the eyes are on the prison. And then, of course, on the Justice Ministry in Saxony as well, that he was under their watch. So they should have watched him more thoroughly, more closely. Saxony is a state in Eastern Germany where authorities have made a number of mistakes in the past, and so all our eyes are on the authorities in the state now. And as we just saw in the Twitter feeds, a lot of politicians here across all political aisles are raising questions, are saying that they're stunned, that they're shocked that the prison had let this happen in Saxony. And I have seldomly seen that many reactions from politicians really across the political spectrum, asking how could they have let this happen. And Interior Minister Thomas de Maizière, he was urging this morning for a quick and very thorough investigation of the issue.
Charlotte, another aspect to this story is that apparently just a few days ago, the suspect, Jabr al-Bakr, implicated the Syrian men who took him into custody and handed him over to the police. What do we know about that?
Yeah, that's a very curious issue. Apparently, Al-Bakr was already questioned by police while he was in prison. His lawyer wasn't present at that time. And so far, we have the police or the lawyer, his lawyer, have not confirmed or neither denied what he has said in this investigation when they questioned him, when the authorities questioned him. But there, Al-Bakr apparently accused the 3 Syrians that captured him of conspiracy, that they knew about what he was doing, about his plans. And of course, that is a very serious accusation that the police most likely will follow now. They will look into that. But there could be several reasons. He could either be just protecting, Al-Bakr could have tried to protect himself, downplayed the whole issue of his arrest, or he could have just merely wanted to take revenge on those 3 Syrians that captured him. But those 3 Syrians, and that is the seriousness of the accusation, are celebrated as heroes here in Germany for their ability to capture Al-Bakr and for their loyalty and courage that they showed in this incident.
Charlotte, what does Al-Bakr's death, though, mean for the larger investigation into his possible links to Islamic State, a larger terrorist cell, to his plans to bomb one of Berlin's 2 airports? I mean, that is a very important ongoing investigation right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his capture, we have to say, was a huge success. The president of the intelligence service yesterday confirmed that Al-Bakr was likely planning an attack this week at a Berlin airport, and that was prevented by the authorities. So in that sense, a huge success. On the other hand, the capture of Al-Bakr also meant very important information, insights into the workings of the Islamic State. There were questions if he had traveled to Turkey or Syria over the summer, and really statements from Al-Bakr himself could have given insights into the inner workings of the Islamic State and their plans here in Germany. So all this valuable information is now lost because of his suicide.
Okay, hopefully we'll know more in this press conference today from Saxony's Justice Minister as to an answer to some of the questions we have today. Charlotte, thanks very much.
Let me now draw in our political correspondent, Charlotte Potts, here in Berlin. Charlotte, a political storm over Jabbar al-Bakr being found dead in custody. Some very strong reactions. Tell us more about what's being said.
Yeah, indeed, political storm is the right expression here. We have heard from politicians across all political aisles today that they're shocked and stunned as to how this could have happened, how the #1 terror suspect here in Germany could be able to commit suicide in a prison where he was supposed to be watched. So there are a lot of unanswered questions that politicians are raising now. They're urging investigations. One top Christian Democrat of Merkel's party was saying this is a true nightmare. And we have heard Thomas de Maizière, the interior minister, saying that this is a huge setback for terror investigations. Of course, we have to note again, this was one of the top terror suspects that Germany had in prison, and he could have given very valuable information. So across the aisle, I've seldomly seen such a united answer from politicians that are urging for an investigation, urging to find out what really happened there. And also we are hearing the first voices now that are urging the local or the state politicians in Saxony where this incident happened to step back from their posts.
So you're saying, Charlotte, this is more than just a political and administrative embarrassment. There are security implications to this incident.
I mean, first and foremost, it is definitely an administrative embarrassment. The eyes are here on the prison. How could they have let this happen? Why wasn't he watched around the clock? Such an important prisoner that should have been very clear to them. Then, of course, the Justice Ministry in Saxony is being watched very closely in this incident because they should have told the prison and the police how to handle this situation better. So in that sense, a very administrative embarrassment for the state of Saxony that had many, let's say, structural problems in the past in handling refugee cases. So they've been on the radar quite a bit, the state of Saxony. So certainly they are going to look more into that. But also, of course, security concerns, because was he conspiring with other people? How did he get in touch with the Islamic State in the first place? All these questions are unanswered now, and we won't hear any answers from him anymore. And yes, of course, that leaves a security implication as well.
And what does, have the police released any more details about the terrorist suspect? We do know that 1.5 kilos of explosives were found in his apartment and that he was ostensibly planning an attack on a major Berlin airport. Has there been any confirmation, any more evidence from officials?
Yeah, exactly. The president of the intelligence service yesterday confirmed that the attack that Al-Bakr planned was indeed, he wanted to carry it out at one of the Berlin airports, and that it was to be carried out this week. So there was an immediate threat. We've also learned about Al-Bakr that he apparently traveled to Turkey and Syria last summer to be trained there by the Islamic State, and that was after he had already been living in Germany for quite a while. So all these questions, they will look, the authorities need to look into that, of course, further. But everybody was hoping that we would learn more about Islamic State networks, about his motives and plans here in Germany from the investigations, and that is not going to happen anymore.
Right. Charlotte Potts at our parliamentary studios, thank you.